Hello and welcome to a Drafthouse Diary for Thursday, June 13th, 2024, when I went to the Alamo Drafthouse at Sloan's Lake to see The Watchers. The Watchers is a reasonably good, capably made horror movie. The setup presents us with Dakota Fanning as a young woman with some severe, unresolved childhood trauma who becomes lost in a trackless forest in the Irish countryside. Soon she joins four other people who are trapped living in a bunker-like cabin where they must retreat every night, because that is when mysterious, dangerous creatures come to watch them. Some parts of this setup may seem contrived to check off standard boxes, but the movie manages to avoid being too formulaic, and it rarely telegraphs its twists, so it has a few good surprises. And the performances are, for the most part, understated, which fits the tone of the movie, but it leaves the characters seeming a little underdeveloped. It's nothing brilliant, but it is entertaining and engaging. Comparing it to other films I've seen this year, The Watchers is miles better than Tarot. It's more on a par with Night Swim. In fact, a little better than Night Swim in that it maintains a sense of focus that movie really lacked. And now that we've talked a little bit about the filmmaking, it's time for a digression. I'm going to rant about something for a little while. I'm going to rant about a popular term, a term that I absolutely loathe, and that term is Nepo Baby. The reason I bring it up is, of course, that this film was directed by Ishana Night Shyamalan, daughter of M. Night Shyamalan. I usually don't seek out reviews before I record my own review, but I happened to stumble upon a review of this movie before I saw it, and this review made reference to Nepo Babies destroying movies behind the camera, as well as in front. First of all, there is nothing in this movie that destroys anything. You may like it or you may not, but the fact that the director is a child of an already established filmmaker is not really relevant to whether or not the movie is good. But second, what is the point or the value of that term, Nepo Baby? I think it has none. All it does is give an excuse to ignore someone, to treat them and their work as unworthy of any kind of consideration because of who their parent is. Like most epithets, it gives lazy thinkers an excuse not to think. I think that people should create their work and be given an opportunity to create their work and to have their work stand or fall based upon its own qualities. What that term Nepo Baby seems to describe is a situation where a person grows up with a parent who is successful in a particular line of work. They grow up surrounded by that world. They find themselves with some interest in pursuing that line of work themselves. They may or may not have some above average talent in that field, but if one or more of their parents are successful, they may very well have inherited some ability. At very least, their upbringing has probably provided knowledge, access to training, connections that'll help them get a start in that field. You know what that describes? That describes practically every single craft, trade, and profession in the history of human civilization. For much of human history, it was pretty much assumed that a person would go into the same line of work as their parents, or at least something related. It's an understandable tendency in practical terms and just human terms. And in case you think I'm saying this all for some personal or defensive reason, I'm not. I did not follow my father into the field of municipal utility management, as important as that is, and my son has not followed my career path, assuming there's some discernible path we could figure out. But we don't tend to raise eyebrows or make derogatory comments when the child of a building contractor becomes a building contractor, or when the child of a lawyer becomes a lawyer, or the child of a baker becomes a baker. It's great that in many societies today, many of us have the privilege of having more choices at our disposal. But still, people rarely find it shocking or distasteful or even noteworthy when a child follows in a parent's footsteps. But for some lines of work, we do. Why is that? Well, it tends to be the careers that in our culture can be lucrative or can generate celebrity, and for these and other reasons, those lines of work tend to be competitive. If it's a craft or a profession in which a lot of people would like to have careers, it somehow doesn't seem fair that someone's name or connections or family tree might give them a boost. But does that mean that they should not be allowed to try? That they should be preemptively excluded from that business? And I'm not talking about parents who push children into the spotlight, regardless of ability, when the children are clearly too young or uninformed to be making that decision themselves. For that, we should absolutely call out the parent. Not the child, but the parent. But that's not what I'm talking about here. It might be true that the child of a celebrity has a better chance to get started on a career in show business. But there's also a lot of money at stake in show business. And if someone simply does not have the skills or the talent to do work that is either artistically or commercially successful, preferably both, that is not likely to be a long career. On the other side of that coin, looking back, should we have discounted the work of people who had long and accomplished careers because those careers may have started with a leg up thanks to a successful parent? Should we look down on the work of Jeff Bridges or Josh Brolin or Timothy Hutton or Michael Douglas because they were the sons of famous actors? Should we discredit the career of Alan Ladd Jr.? I'm sure that his work in the film industry benefited from the fact that his father was a famous actor. But Alan Ladd Jr. went on to be one of the most successful and insightful producers and studio executives of his generation. Without Alan Ladd Jr., we probably don't have Alien, or Chariots of Fire, or Blade Runner, or A Fish Called Wanda. Without Alan Ladd Jr., we absolutely do not have Star Wars. Ladd is the guy who took that to the head of 20th Century Fox and got it greenlit. And speaking of Star Wars, are we going to write off Carrie Fisher as a Nepo baby? Are we going to cast aside her accomplishments as an actor and as a writer because her parents were Eddie Fisher and Debbie Reynolds? I hope not. Them's fighting words. So, is it likely that Ishana Night Shyamalan had an easier time getting to direct her debut movie, The Watchers, because of her father? Of course. He produced it, for crying out loud. But let's judge the movie and her ability as a director on their merits. I thought The Watchers was okay. Some might not like it, and that's fine. But that assessment shouldn't be based on the filmmaker's family. Okay, rant over. Thank you for listening. On to other parts of my trip to the Alamo. This pre-show did not seem to be custom-made for this feature. It seemed like a generic selection to go with any horror movie. But it wasn't the same one that I'd already seen in front of several other horror movies in the last year or so. It had an old silent short about ghosts set to some creepy electronic music, local TV commercials with monster and zombie themes, some other shorts and fan films, trailers for classic horror movies like The Dunwich Horror, and William Castle himself in a trailer for 13 Ghosts. Definitely a good pre-show for this kind of movie. For dinner, I got the Caesar salad with chicken. I'm sure you're tired of hearing that, but it's good and it's relatively light. It's a nice option. The staff in the theater were just fine. Interesting story, though. When I entered the theater and walked through the lobby, a manager was explaining the Alamo quiet zone rules against talking or phone use to a customer who had clearly run afoul of the policy, or maybe a friend had. Among other points the manager made, he described the policy as a promise the Alamo made to every other person in that theater, and he was not about to break that promise by allowing behavior that doesn't follow the rules. I really liked that description, and I appreciate the Alamo for enforcing that policy when necessary. So, kudos to that member of the Sloan's Lake team. I hope you enjoyed this Drafthouse Diary. If you did, please click the like button, and if you want to make sure you get more of these, click subscribe. But most important, thank you very much for joining me. I'll be back soon with more, and in the meantime, enjoy your movies, and when you do, stay till the end of the credits.